So the first step we want to do when we're installing our Firebird boiler is figure out exactly where our venting is going to go. So in this situation here, we're going to use our polypropylene chimney liner kit. First thing we do installing our liner kit is putting the support bracket into the chimney. So we have to open up our thimble through the chimney to make sure we can fit our bracket in. And we've done that, and then we need to figure out exactly where it's going to mount and drill a couple of pilot holes.
All right, now that the pilot holes are drilled, we're going to install the bracket, slide it back in, and put our masonry screws in. And that's it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to dry fit the lower elbow of the polypropylene liner kit to make sure it fits and our bracket's in the right place. That all looks good. Now we're going to go out and we're going to install the liner kit down the chimney, and then we'll come back and mount this up. All right, the first thing we're going to do is make sure we have a nice clean ridge to mount our gasket in for our lower connection. We're going to snap the lower connection on the bottom before we run it down the chimney.
So you have the lower connection in place. All you have to do is close the two fingers onto the pipe, and that locks it in place.
All right, now we're going to pass this down the chimney. It's a nice flexible liner, it's very light, easy to work with. Straighten out the end a little bit and it'll slide right down. And what they send in the kit is they have these sort of centering brackets that strap around the pipe as it goes down the chimney. You put one about every 10 feet. They're a simple zip tie construction that just mounts right in the ridges and ties around. These are directional brackets, so you want the point of the brackets to be pointing up, so that it has an easy time going down the chimney.
There we go, we're locked in place.
All right, the first bracket's on, we're gonna slide it down. You wanna throw another bracket in? So we're gonna install our second centering bracket. This is a double wall flex, so it doesn't seem like it from the outside, but it actually has two walls. So if the outer ridges do scrape the inside of the chimney a little bit, it's okay, the inside is still intact. They supply 5 brackets in the kit, so we're probably going to use more than every 10 feet, maybe about every 8 feet, just because we have them. Nice plug. I think we're there.
It might be at the bottom.
Now that we've verified that the chimney liner is all the way down to the bottom, the base of the chimney, we're now going to install the main support bracket and the upper fitting. So I'm going to cut the chimney at the appropriate length. Another nice thing about this, another nice feature about this polypropylene liner kit is it's obviously a plastic material, so it's very easy to cut, and you can just cut it with your Leatherman or other razor blade. Just like that. I'm going to clean up the edge a little bit and get ready to mount the next gasket. Now that I have a nice clean cut edge, I'm going to put the top gasket in the next full joint. I'm going to slide the metal steel hanging bracket, support bracket, over the top. And then the top clamp fitting. This goes on much like the bottom fitting. You slide it on as far as you can, clamp the brackets down, the latches down. One thing you gotta try to do, the polypropylene has a sort of memory to it, so it tends to want to stay in the round. You want to make sure you can get this as straight as possible before you continue. We'll just fit this. And now we're going to dry fit the flashing kit. Make sure that it's going to mount up snug on the top of the chimney. Then we're going to drill some pilot holes and fasten it down. I'm going to put it in high speed. You want to put a bead of silicone on? We also brought up some roof caulking, so we're going to put a bead down around the outside edge of the flashing flange to make sure we seal it against any kind of weather.
All that.
Now that the pilot holes are drilled, we're going to install the screws. Okay, the last step up here is to install the stainless steel termination in the top. And we're done out here. So now we'll pack up, we'll head down the basement and finish it up. So now that the upper part of the chimney is completed, the cap is in, we came back down to the basement, we put our elbow system in, locked that down. It's on the support bracket in the bottom, and now we're going to come back later on and mortar this in and then put our trim plate on, but for right now we're going to slide our trim plate on just so we know that where our chimney is going to be and what position it's going to be in so we can complete the boiler installation. So now that our chimney liner system is in, we put the boiler in place. For this particular installation we're using the optional Firebird stand. Nice things about the stand, it gets it up off the ground, which gives us a place to mount our condensate neutralizer on the side. It also gives you the opportunity to level the boiler, so you're starting with a nice clean level system. Now what we're going to do, now that we have it in position where we want, we're going to screw through the bottom of the stand. There's pre-drilled holes in the stand. We're going to drill through the bottom of that and mount into our legs. The chimney liner kit is supplied with stainless steel connections to go from the boiler to the liner. What we have is a boiler collar, and then there's a straight piece, an elbow, and another straight piece. For this installation we'll probably just use the collar, straight piece, elbow, and we purchased an optional 45-degree angle bend. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the gasket in place, secure the top boiler connector in, All of these stainless steel joints are twist lock connections with integrated gaskets. What we're going to do is we're going to take the gaskets out so that it's easier to get the joints together for now, so we can dry fit it, make sure everything's exactly how we want it, and then we'll put the gaskets back in later and twist lock them in. So we're going to start off with this vertical pipe, which is adjustable from 10 to 16 inches. We're going to use our elbow next. And then our 45. Should bring us right into the liner kit. And when you do this, you want to make sure that you have a nice pitch back to the boiler. The liner system is designed to collect all the condensate and bring it back to the boiler. The boiler has a collection system, and then we'll be able to get it to a proper drain. All right, that all looks good. The Firebird boiler comes with 6 tappings. There's 2 3/4 tappings for your accessories, your operation control, your temperature pressure gauge, and then on the sides of the boilers there's 4 1-inch tappings. There's 2 on each side. So you can supply and return out of either side. Obviously return always goes to the bottom, supply always comes out of the top. You can also cross corner if you'd like. And then the opposite 1-inch tappings are going to be your drain and your pressure relief valve. So what we've done is we've sweat our pipes on this side of the boiler for our supply and return, and now we're going to install our accessories on the other side. Shipped from the factory with these red protective plugs in the tappings. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove all of those. We've already pre-taped our fittings. We're going to thread our pressure relief valve fittings in.
One of the great things about the Firebird boiler is there really are no special piping considerations. It's not a requirement for primary, secondary piping. It's very straightforward to pipe up. As we said, you have the left and the right side available, supply off the top, return to the bottom. The only requirement that we do have is if you are in a system where you're going to consistently get 110-degree water temperature back to the boiler, you do need to put a thermostatic bypass in to guarantee that the return water temperature back to the boiler is going to stay above 110 degrees. That's going to guarantee that there's no condensation in the non-condensating part of the boiler. And it's also going to give you more consistent heat out to the heating system. So that's really the only requirement as far as piping goes. It makes it very easy and very straightforward to put the boiler in.
Next, we're going to install our accessory 3/4 items. One is the temperature pressure gauge, which is going to go on the right-hand side. And the other one is the immersion well for our control. For this particular installation, we're using the hydro level control, so we're going to use that well. The boiler also comes with, or as an option, can be sold with the AquaSmart control. So now that the boiler is pressurized, we're going to work on our condensate side of the system. This is our condensate trap. It has 5 parts, 6 parts including the hose. This is the base cup. The cone is going to go in the cup first, then the ball is going to drop into the cone, and then the 1/2-inch connection piece, and then the cap on the top. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to Teflon tape the fitting coming out of the boiler just to make sure that the condensate doesn't leak and there's no issues with that. So what you want to do is you want to take your threaded connection, put it inside your cap piece, thread that onto the bottom of the boiler connection. You can just hand tighten it, make sure it's real good and snug. If you feel like you want to put a wrench on it, tighten it a little bit more, that's fine. Then the condensate trap slides on, and the outer cap screws down. Now the boiler is supplied with knockouts in the side of the casing. There's one on either side and one in the back for your hose to go through. So you can go ahead. We're going to use this side for this one, and we're going to mount our neutralizer on the side of the base. So that's going to slide in and connect to the trap. And it's a nice snug fit, so there's no need for a clamp. Our pipe through the side of the casing. What we're going to do is we're going to mount our neutralizer. I Teflon taped and threaded in the barb fitting on one end, the inlet side, which is marked inlet and outlet on the neutralizer. I want to sort of dry fit it, make sure it's where I want it. And I'll mount the brackets. Another nice benefit of this stand is you get to mount these items on the stand, and simple sheet metal screws is all you need. Just clamp the neutralizer in place. Stick your hose fitting in, and then later on we're going to install the barb fitting that goes to our drain. So now that we have our neutralizer piped in and all set, we're ready to mount the burner and run the oil lines. As you can see, we've already installed our filtration right on the stand. Like we had mentioned before, it's another nice use of the stand. We believe that it's good to have filtration at the burner to protect the burner. We also have a filter at the tank to make sure we cover the oil there. First thing you want to do when you mount the burner is you're going to take the flange out of the box, put the gasket aside for a minute. You're going to take this mounting bolt, put it through the back side of the flange, and then there's a little stop nut that goes on that to keep that bolt in place. Then you're going to put your gasket on the boiler, mount your flange with that bolt and these hooks in the up position. As you can see, it lines up with the casing. And then you're going to install the 4 washers and nuts that came with the boiler. Alright, now that those are tightened up, we're ready to mount the burner. Just for ease of installation, I've already installed the oil line that comes out of the burner. It's a standard Riello oil line that's used in a lot of the 40 series burners in the States already. I've installed the supplied adapter fitting, and then I pipe doped in a compression fitting. When you put the Riello fitting in here, note that you shouldn't use pipe dope inside the oil valve. You also don't want to use pipe dope on this side. It's a compression fitting already. Riello supplies that, so you don't need any dope there. I only doped my adapter fitting here. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold the burner up to the boiler, and it simply installs with this one nut. There's an O-ring gasket that's around the blast tube that helps seal it from any back pressure that the burner is going to see. So we mount that up. That's nice and snug. And then we can bring our oil line up. Okay, now that we finished mounting the burner, we changed over to wiring. We mounted the hydro level box on the well that we installed earlier. We took power to the hydro level box from our service switch on the side of the boiler. We have our boiler circulator wired into the hydro level as well. This end of the burner wire harness is pre-wired on the burner. The other end comes loose in the box. So we mounted that on the hydro level. We wired the red wire to B1, that's going to be line voltage to the burner, white wire to B2, ground to ground. Now we're ready to plug that in. Here's a quick disconnect, so when you're servicing, you can disconnect that if you'd like to remove the burner from the boiler. And that's pretty much it for wiring. Okay, now we're ready to go back and install the gaskets and finish up the flue piping. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the gaskets you removed earlier for the ease of rough fitting, install them back in the groove in the female end of the fittings, which I've already done these. And then these fittings are fit nice and snug. So what you want to do is you want to use a non-petroleum based silicone lubricant to make sure that the joints slide in nice and easily. I got a small packet of it here. Just sort of apply that to the gasket to make sure it's going to slip well. Apply some in here. And then there's tabs on the joints that are going to line up with tabs on the female end. Like I said, it's a nice snug fit. You can twist lock it into place. And then I'm going to rotate this around. And another reason we didn't lock down our plate on the chimney, again, we have to mortar it in, but this also allows us a little bit of flexibility to hook up the boiler piping. So make sure all the joints are nice and tight. Make sure we have a nice pitch back to the boiler. And the exhaust pipe is done. Okay, once we got the burner wired, we were ready to fire it. We lit it off, got our analyzer out. It was a little bit over aired to begin with, so we used our Allen key that's supplied in the burner fitting bag, cut back on our air a little bit, dialed it in, and we're at 12% CO2, 24 parts per million CO, 158 degrees stack temperature, and the big number is the 91.85% efficiency. So we feel pretty good with the numbers where they are now. We're ready to call the installation complete. One last thing we're going to do before we go, we're going to turn the boiler off, we're going to let the pressure off. Every boiler is supplied with Sentinel X100, and this is a corrosion inhibitor. Since it's a steel boiler, we want to protect the boiler. So this is going to be injected into the drain fitting once you let the pressure off the boiler with a simple caulking gun and a barbed hose adapter. And that will inject in the system, circulate through the boiler, and protect the boiler from corrosion due to the water. And that's it. The installation is complete.